Peace and love, fam. Peace and love. This is Moreno Bey. The presentation that I'm presenting today is entitled The Moorish Nation versus the Vice Lord People Nation. Now, let me go ahead for disclaimer purposes. We are not at odds whatsoever. Actually, what this video is about is how we have a lot of similarities that you may have never heard of or known of. All right. Again, the Moorish Nation versus the Vice Lord People Nation. All right, I got to give out my disclaimer, okay? So this presentation is not intended to misinform or discredit the Moorish Divine and National Movement nor the Almighty Vice Lord Nation in any shape, form, or fashion. This presentation is meant to be utilized as a teaching tool so that the generations to come will better understand the origin of what has become tainted by design for educational purposes only. All right, now that we got that out the way, let's move. All right, let me tell you something about myself. So I'm Moreno Bey. I'm from the Southern United States, Memphis to be exact. I was born and raised here. My city has a lot of wealth and history, including music, delicious food, sports, the civil rights movement, and much more. It's a lot of history here. My passion has always been to assist others. I got my big start on YouTube in 2016, and this led me to have a following that's more like family. And eventually I authored 2 books. It was necessary to create literature that could possibly assist the next person, since I suffered dearly from colored judicial proceedings regarding child support and corrupt public officials. After many years of independent research in our local law library, I've gathered information that the public may never have known of. With this being said, I bring you published info. So this is one of my books that I've written several years ago. And I also have a book on child support and how I got through that, and the obstacles that I had to go through. Oh yeah, visit my website, the official PublishedInfo.com. It's at the bottom of the screen. All right, some may ask, who is he? Like, why does he think that he can bring this information? So why am I qualified to speak on this topic? That's actually a good question. I'll tell you why. So I'm qualified to speak on this subject matter due to the fact that I study history and I am symbol literate. Furthermore, I am a native Memphian by way of Mississippi and Chicago, in which I have close ties to family and friends that are affiliated in certain factions. Currently, my YouTube channel has over 500,000 views. And as you can see, the photos that you see in this slide right here, these are some videos where I'm speaking on symbols and its importance and how relevant symbols are in the past and today. All right, let's give a brief. Before we start, I'll give a brief on our people that migrated to Chicago from the Deep South, particularly Memphis, Tennessee, and Mississippi. Next, we'll touch on how the Vice Lords found its inception. Overall, this presentation will eventually detail how the Vice Lord Nation's proposed principles and symbols were adopted directly from Prophet Noble Drew Ali and the old-time religion of Islamism. The message that Prophet Noble Drew Ali brought to us predates what the Vice Lord Nation's original intent by over 65 years. I ask that you be patient and open-minded while I present this information, because I do understand where both nations currently reside. With all due respect, Islam, peace and love. The Great Migration from the Deep South. Now, before we go to the next slide, look at these photos. These are actual photos of what some call African Americans that arrived in Chicago around the 1940s or whatever. Look how different our people looked at that time. All right. They looked more conservative. The children are playing, they're dressed a certain way. So things were a lot different back then. All right, let's get it. The 1940s migration to Chicago. Beginning in the very early 1940s, a new surge of Black migration came to Chicago as the war industry opened up several jobs for Americans. In the southern United States, jobs were a lot scarcer for Black families, and many were still living in extreme poverty without many essentials like plumbing, adequate housing, or even clean water to drink at times. Everywhere in the United States, there was racism and hatred towards Blacks, but in the South, it was much more obvious as there were actual laws that explicitly commanded that Blacks should remain segregated. Employers could legally discriminate against hiring Blacks, and many Jim Crow laws even forbid Blacks from owning their own property. This forced many Blacks to work in jobs that whites didn't want because of the very low pay and harsh working conditions. Blacks also often had to rent from slumlords that legally could neglect property and leave living conditions in shambles. There was not much representation for the Black community in these years, but there was plenty of representation for the whole white Southerners in favor of these harsh treatments, including the KKK that often roamed through shanty towns that Blacks lived in and enforced these Jim Crow laws harshly. Blacks have been migrating from the South to Chicago since the 1860s, but there was not much of a call to take the risk and travel up to Chicago until the Chicago Defender newspaper started sending issues of their paper down south, informing Black families of the success that some families experienced after moving. In 1916, it sparked a third wave of Black migration, which also created a big wave. As families got settled and some reported had a better life, brought more families into a lull happened into the 1930s during the Depression. Look at this photo. This is Chicago's South Side, Black Belt, 1941. In the early 40s, it was once again being reported that Chicago was the promised land in many ways. Chicago was a much better alternative to living in the Jim Crow South, but Chicago would also be new horrors to Black families that was not mentioned in Chicago Defender. Families would now trade one form of a nightmare for another. Now, if you look closely, you'll see how we dressed at that period of time. It was totally different from how we dress now. It was mainly more conservative, like I said earlier. You got the dress hats, you have the open long coats, you have the sweaters, button down shirts, slacks. It was more of a conservative thing. As the big rush to the north began in the 1940s, Southern Black families arrived and soon found out the promised land was not all it was cracked up to be, as an immediate housing shortage often stopped families dead in their tracks. Most Blacks were crowding into the south side of the city, into areas like Bronzeville, Oakland, Washington Park, and some other various south side neighborhoods. Most Southside neighborhoods didn't allow Blacks and used restrictive racial covenants to prevent Blacks from moving and confining most Black families to move within a few signed neighborhoods on the South Side. The West Side of Chicago was still very white, and these neighborhoods did not have much of a Black population. To make a long story short, redlining practices on the West Side of Chicago successfully brought down the value of the entire neighborhoods, and houses with a swift motion caused white people to move out very fast, and predatory real estate agents moved in Black families while sticking them with higher mortgages. All right, so what we see from the first slide to now, what we see is this. We see that so-called Black people, and I'll get into why I say so-called later, but so-called Black people were influenced to flee up north from the Jim Crow laws that were in the South. When they arrived in the North, they saw that things wasn't exactly how it was advertised. All right. It was probably a lot worse as far as the living conditions, not necessarily the laws that was impacted. So, what does all of this mean? What does all of this mean? All right. I'm going to show the connection with all of it. Y'all be patient. Y'all stick in there. I want to show y'all something. Let's get it. Long story short, when the migration started in the 40s, the people that arrived mostly didn't get what they expected. Opportunists took full advantage of these people and left them no choice but to deal with the situation because they couldn't afford to do otherwise. In the mid 1950s, North Lawndale declined due to business closings and building deterioration. The lack of parks and recreation caused the local youth to rebel and harass each other for fun due to boredom, frustration, and poverty. Pre-existing youth clubs in the community soon converted into street gangs like Imperial Chaplains and Clovers. Through the late 50s and early 60s, the vice lords were a force to be reckoned with. The year 1966, the vice lords' new cause was bringing in more positive attention as they began to work closely with Egyptian Cobras, Black Peace Stones, and Black disciples on bettering their communities and putting an end to violence. So the key year, 1966, again, the year 1966, the vice lords' new cause was bringing in more positive attention as they began to work closely with Egyptian Cobras, Black Peace Stones, and Black disciples. So if they were trying to bring in more positive attention around that time, obviously they saw whatever they was doing before, which was the opposite, negative, wasn't working, right? So as grown men, grown adults, we tend to wisen up after seeing our mistakes. I was just discussing this with my son earlier on how it goes with failing and succeeding. You got to fail to succeed. All right. On the left, you see a photo of one of the founders, Edwin Marion Perry. Here's a fun fact y'all might have never known about. All right, my source is ChicagoGangHistory.com. Check it out. In the summer of that year, Martin Luther King came to Chicago and stayed in North Lawndale to help protest during the West Side Riots of 1966. Martin Luther King planned a march through mostly white areas of the south side of Chicago in protest. The Vice Lord, disciples, and Stones were ready to march alongside Dr. King, but after a remark was overheard from one of King's men that they didn't need gangbangers to help. Edwin Perry gave one quick signal with his hand, and all the gangs dispersed and withdrew aid. Later that night, Dr. King summoned Edwin Perry, Bobby Gore, and a few other leaders to where he was staying and told them he didn't back that statement about not needing the gangs for support. Instead, he expressed that he needed them, and after that, the Vice Lords and their allies marched alongside Dr. King. After this march, the Vice Lords started to get major attention that summer as groups were coming to North Lawndale to speak to the Vice Lords and admire their progress. The deacons of defense, Ram, as examples came to meet the Vice Lords, and this is what got the ball rolling. Everyone could meet everyone could come meet the Vice Lords at the club that opened a little area earlier that year. All right. The Vice Lords was founded in 1958 by Edwin Marion Perry, Toho, Bobby Bonds, Ernest Wren, and Leonard Calloway in or near Lawndale, North Lawndale to be exact. So let's do a rewind. How did the Vice Lords get their start? All right. Slowly, I'm showing you the connection. All right. You just got to really pay attention on how things started. We spoke about the migration. We talked about the poverty and the things that went on in Chicago that wasn't expected and how the cliques started, right? How cliques started, how things were bad and how they tried to turn things into a better turnaround, right? All right, now again, let's do the rewind. How did the Vice Lords get their start? The Vice Lord Nation is one of the largest gangs in the United States with chapters in every state in the nation and almost every city and town in this country. The Vice Lord Nation has grown so powerful because of the goals the nation is trying to accomplish over time. Many think it is all about drugs and money, but the real cause for the nation is not about drugs and money or not even about violence. But this is the behavior that often results from membership, but the nation itself does not condone violence and criminal activity. Remember, think about that five. Think about what the five principles. There was a time in history where our country had faith in the vice lords and even offered assistance. As a result, something positive and marvelous developed from it and helped West Side youths live better lives. The vice lords were positive for the North Lawndale community and had a very positive impact on the youth during this period. What needs to be understood is there was barely any opportunity for Black youths on the west side of Chicago, and there was often only one way to go. Many say the vice lords have origins that date all the way back to the 1940s. However, this does not mean any part of the nation was founded back in the 40s. It just means that members of older gangs ended up flipping the vice lords in later years, that many of the goals of the older gangs intertwined with the development of the almighty vice lord nation, right? So remember, think about that five and what those principles mean. All right, check it out. We got two photos. Again, we got a photo of Edwin Marion Papillo Perry on the left, one of the founders. And on the right, you have some teenagers in front of Teen Town where they're just hanging out. And it says conservative vice lords on the back of their shirts. These are early photos of vice lords around 1967. All right, you know that saying, a picture speaks 1,000 words? Look at it. Conservative vice lords giving back to the community. I'm sure they didn't just pose for this picture, just, hey, they wake up one day and say, you know what, let's take a picture with a few brooms in our hand. I'm sure they were really getting down and doing what they're supposed to do in Chicago. All right, so now we're going to show the connection of the people nation, and we're about to start slowly getting into symbols and things that you may just not know of, like the Moorish headdress and so on. So the People Nation was formed in reaction to the creation of the Folk Nation Alliance of Gangs in 1978. The El Rukin, now Black P-Stones, Vice Lords and Latin Kings formed an alliance system of their own and entitled it People. Now, look at the brother in the photo with the Moorish headdress on. The arrow is pointing directly to it. All right, just remember that's a fez. Got to ask yourself, why does he have a fez on? Right? Why does he have a fez on? And shortly we'll be getting into what is the fez. The vice lords were mainly in the media about their prison issues. What was not in the media was when the vice lords were key players in the creation of the People Alliance in Statesville Prison in 1978. A labor strike was organized behind prison walls that was put together by Black Gangster Disciples, Black P-Stones, El Rukins, Mickey Cobras, Black Soul, and Vice Lord gang members. The Vice Lords and Black Gangster Disciples were especially pivotal in this organizing that became known as Folk and People. This assembly effectively reached white and Hispanic gangs and got them involved in a total sit-down to refuse to do labor in the prison until rotten food stopped being served and there was overall better treatment for inmates. The stoppage protest must have been successful because it never made the news. The Folk and People Alliance, or because they were allies and enemies that needed to organize for this event. However, for this event, all of the prison became allies while this went down. So this is something else they don't speak about. All right. Now again, I'm not oblivious to what's going on now on either side. The Moorish Nation, Vice Lord People Nation, whatever. Like, I'm not oblivious, but I'm trying to connect you guys and show you how it all started and where did it come from, its origin. When did the Vice Lords adopt the Islamic faith and its symbols? Answer, late 70s. The El Rukns, Black Peace Stones, and Vice Lords have a deep history that dates to 1959 when Leonard Calloway and Bobby Gore helped their cousins Jeff Ford and Eugene Hairston organize themselves into a Southside gang leaders that eventually created the Black Peace Stone Nation. Now, these organizations were coming back together to assemble the People Alliance, and the El Rukns proposed the Vice Lords become part of the Islamic faith and adopt Islamic symbols and bylaws. All right? It makes me think about the Moorish Science Temple and what Drew Ali put before us, the bylaws. With this being established, the Vice Lords and El Rukns were able to assemble this alliance and represent the Islamic side of the People Alliance that Black Peace Stones and Mickey Cobras would acknowledge as all as well. The People Alliance could also bring more peace within Vice Lord factions as there was some conflict among the factions. The overall adoption of the Islamic doctrine brought a spiritual aspect to the Almighty Vice Lord Nation, which provided peaceful spiritual guidance for members to act outside of criminal endeavors. These new Vice Lord doctrines were aimed at preventing violence and bringing new discipline to members. The pyramid was adopted as a new symbol, and each corner of the pyramid would add up to 360 degrees. Just to be clear, though, Vice Lords are not Muslims. Only Islamic doctrines were adopted, but not the whole faith. So remember, I told you to remember the fez and what it is, and we'll be getting into that shortly. So just remember the fez, the Moorish headdress, what it is, okay? So why are symbols important? This is the answer. Because symbols are a larger body of information summed into just that, a symbol. All right, moving on. All right, let me give y'all a quick example of a famous symbol. Now, the so-called Black community, we know exactly what this is. Like, this is like God to a lot of us. This symbol right here of Michael Jordan jumping into the sky. All right. But this is a symbol that we know. So it says the Air Jordan logo is called Jumpman and is a stylized image of Michael Jordan in Nike sneakers. The logo represents freedom and power, which are depicted in the silhouette of Michael Jordan in a leap. It is a graphical reflection of strength and confidence, which evokes a sense of almightiness and makes you feel that nothing is impossible. All right. So instead of putting all of what I just said on the back of a shoe, they summed it into just that, a symbol of a silhouette Michael Jordan leaping into the air with a basketball in his hand. So now you should be able to see why symbols are powerful, because there's a meaning behind the symbol. And that's what we're about to go into. About to get into a few symbols and the importance. Now, mind you, just because you don't understand something doesn't mean that it's spooky. It's something that's of witchcraft. You don't have to be superstitious, any of that. You just have to know the history and understand the meaning behind these symbols. Let's get it. All right. If you look at the photo at the top left, you see a brother by the name of Rico Crenshaw. He's an El Rukn spokesman. He has a fez on. The year says 1984. Now, if we go down right beneath him, you see another brother with a fez on, holding up the 5 on the left, holding up the 2 on the right. He got the palm up on the left, 2 on the right. But notice in the middle, we got the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, as known as the Circle 7 Quran. So when you take that 5 and 2 and add them up, you get 7, right? So what does that 7 mean? It means completion. Basically, it's a holy number, but we'll get back into that. So if we look at the photo on the top right, you see El Rukn Grand Major Temple, AC of the MST. That's the Moorish Science Temple of America, right? You see the connection? And that AC stands for adab chamber. This is where you receive higher degrees of knowledge. So this thing is about knowledge, people. We just gotten away from it. But this is the original intent. It's about knowledge, higher knowledge, positive knowledge. It's not about anything negative whatsoever. And as you look at the bottom photo to the right, you see another brother, El Rukin, People Nation, with a fez on, right? Let's get it. Let's go into it. So with a typical basic Google search, it says the Moorish Science Temple of America is an American national and religious organization founded by Noble Drew Ali. Who's Noble Drew Ali? He's the brother on the right photo at the top with the black fez on. All right. In the early 20th century, he based it on the premise that African Americans are descendants of the Moabites and thus are Moorish by nationality and Islamic by faith. So earlier you heard me say so-called blacks, and I'm about to say now so-called African Americans, because that's not the identity. The identity is Moorish American. All right. So let's go into the fez now. Mind you, I told you earlier that remember the fez. Remember the fez. Look at Prophet Noble Drew Ali, the photo above. He has a fez on. So let me break down what the fez is. The fez is the ancient and modern national headdress of the Moabites, Moors. The fez is a brimless headdress, most commonly produced in scarlet red with an ebony black tassel. The red fez is matched by the red field displayed in the Moorish national standard flag, which you see here. The fez is also produced in black, white, and other color variations, indicating other meanings, social order positions, etc. The black fez is the highest degree. It is worn by the mufti, or Mohammedan judge, Moorish United Front towards Islam. Enforcement of this in one who wears it symbolizes that he or she knows law in full and is able to defend it, including knowledge of martial arts, defense physically, spiritually, and the martial arts degree of the black belt. All right. The fez is worn as a symbol of the womb. The top of it has a nipple shape that symbolizes the navel. The strands of the tassel are 360 degrees and it's not pinned down. That way, when you see a brother with a Moorish fez on, we don't pin our fez, we don't pin our tassels to our fez. All right. The only ones that do that are in the Masonic orders. All right. And they're mimicking us. Yeah, they're mimicking us. So we keep it freely to swing 360 degrees. Now, if you remember earlier, they talk about how they adopted the pyramid and it was 360 degrees, right? All right, hopefully by now, y'all can see, y'all can start seeing the connection. All right. So let's look at the photo on the left. Up front in the white standing, that's Prophet Noble Drew Ali with his hand over his heart. All right. This is the Moorish Science Temple of America. This is in Chicago. See the connection? Chicago, right? Mecca, Chicago, Mecca, Chicago, Mecca. Noble Drew Ali, also known as Timothy Drew or Thomas Drew, was an American religious leader who founded a series of organizations under the umbrella title of the Moorish Science Temple of America. His journey began with the Canaanite Temple in 1913 while he was living in Newark, New Jersey. Later, he settled in Chicago and gained thousands of converts under his instruction. Now, this is around 1925. You remember earlier how I stated how the vice lords, when they came into the Islamic faith, how Prophet Noble Drew Ali message predates it by X amount of years? This is what I was talking about. This is Chicago. And where are these brothers from? Where did it originate? The vice lords, the GDs, and so on. It originated in Chicago. Okay? So Drew Ali's legacy is significant due to his influence on the founding and ideology of the Nation of Islam. That's a whole nother ballpark, right? But I can briefly get into it right now. So this is one of the first forms of Islam in the United States. And when Prophet Noble Drew Ali passed away in 1929, not even a full year later, the Nation of Islam resurrected. All right. And a lot of brothers and sisters walked over there and joined and did their thing over there. But they didn't take all of the ideologies from the Moorish Science Temple and transfer it to the Nation of Islam. But again, that's a whole another story. We'll get into that some other time. All right, back into these pictures of Drew Ali. So if you look on the left, you see the Quran questions for Moorish Americans. All right, you see Prophet Noble Drew Ali is holding a limp body, and that limp body is fallen humanity. What is fallen humanity, according to this picture, is the so-called black woman. All right, if you think about where the so-called black woman is now, you'll see that she's really went down as a whole in the United States. And remember, she's the first teacher, right? She teaches from her womb. So if you see what the young guys are doing now, is because of fallen humanity. All right. They wasn't really taught that well. All right. They wasn't taught to be men, and the men aren't really around anymore. So let's read the Moorish American prayer. It says, Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my God, and my salvation by night and day through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. It says first, who made you? Allah. Now think about a lot of the brothers from the Vice Lord Nation. They'll say arm, leg, arm, head, right? This is what they're talking about. They're talking about Allah. Who is Allah? Allah is the Father of the universe. All right. So that sounds like we're talking about us in a certain degree, right? Think about it. Can we see him? No. Where's the nearest place we can meet him? And it's circled in red in the heart. Now, if you look back to the picture in the middle of Prophet Noble Drew Ali, where's his hand? It's over his heart, right? So this origin of this movement is everything positive. We operate in our higher selves, not our lower selves. Okay. It says, who is Noble Drew Ali? He is Allah's prophet. What is a prophet? A prophet is a thought of Allah manifested in flesh. What is the duty of a prophet? To save nations from the wrath of Allah. Who is the founder of the Moorish Science Temple of America? Noble Drew Ali. So if he's the founder, the El Rukins had to get it from somewhere, right? Who did they get it from? Prophet Noble Drew Ali. And they adopted the principles. They adopted the symbols. What year was the Moorish Science Temple of America founded? 1913. Where? Newark, New Jersey. Where was Noble Drew Ali born? In the state of North Carolina, 1886. What is his nationality? Moorish American. What is your nationality? Moorish American. Why are we Moorish Americans? Because we are descendants of Moroccans born in America. All right? For what purpose was the Moorish Science Temple founded? For uplifting fallen humanity, right? So back to the photo on the left, you see Prophet Drew Ali holding a limp body. That's fallen humanity. That's mother. That's who teaches from the womb. All right. If things aren't right, it's not right because she didn't make it right. Right. We do what she wants. And I'm not saying that in a simp fashion. I'm saying it because we act a certain way according to how women want us to act. All right. To a certain degree. How did the prophet begin to uplift fallen humanity? By teaching them to be themselves. All right. And we're Moorish Americans. That goes back to what I stated earlier about so-called blacks, so-called African Americans. That's why I said that, because I know that's not the identity. The identity, we're Moors. All Moors, who he claimed were descended from the ancient Moabites, describing them as belonging to Northwest Africa as opposed to Moab, as the name suggests. He claimed that Islam and its teachings are more beneficial to the earthly salvation and that their true nature had been withheld from them. Male members of the temple wear fez or turban as head covering. Women wear turbans. As Drew Ali began urging the Moorish Americans to become better citizens, he made speeches like a divine warning, the prophet for the nations, in which he urged them to reject derogatory labels such as black, colored, and Negro. He urged Americans of all races to reject hate and embrace love. He believed that Chicago will become a second Mecca. You see how things are coming together now? All right. Drew Ali crafted Moorish science ideology from a variety of sources, a network of alternative spiritualities that focus on the individual to bring out personal transformation through mystical knowledge of the divine within. So now when we skip down, his approach appealed to thousands of Americans who left severely oppressive conditions in the South through the Great Migration and faced struggles in urban environments. Boom, Great Migration. That's what I was speaking about in the beginning. You see how everything is clicking up now? So let's go to the next slide. The Great Migration again. All right, if you look at this map of the United States, it's showing how so-called blacks were really Moors, were heavily populated in the South, and how they fled north, west, east to get away from the Jim Crow laws. All right, so this dated around the 1910s to the 70s. All right, the location, United States. It was also known as the Great Northern Migration or Black Migration. The cause were poor economic conditions, more job opportunities in the North, racial segregations in the United States, Jim Crow economy, Jim Crow laws, lynching in the States, participants, about 6 million so-called Black Americans. All right, if you look at the photo on the left, this is a photo of the Arthur family, which arrived at Chicago's Pope Street Depot on August 30th, 1920, during the Great Migration. All right, man, they was ready to get the hell up out of the South, you know. Yeah, they got the hell up out the South. You know, I can't blame them for that, you know. All right, let's do a quick. All right, let's do a quick recap. Some things we spoke about, so I can show y'all the connection. I gotta keep it up. So we spoke about earlier the migration from the Deep South. All right, and when they fled north, they had hardships. All right, faced upon arriving in Chicago. All right. Next, the lack of recreation in parks caused local youth to rebel by harassing other children for fun. Okay. Gangs were created due to poverty, frustration, boredom, and a lack of resources. The vice lords were forced to be reckoned with. All right. This is how things started. Then you had the West Side Rise of 1966. We spoke about it. All right. We spoke about how the vice lords started. How it didn't really start as something negative. It started from what I'm talking about. Then we spoke about the Folk and People Alliance. We also spoke about the vice lords adopting the Islamic faith. Also, we spoke on symbols and Noble Drew Ali, right? This is our quick recap. So let's go back to symbols and check some things out. So I grabbed this photo on the left, just something out of the blue. I just grabbed it offline and I saw some vice lord symbols. So what I'm about to do is, from my interpretation, I'm going to compare how their symbolism is basically how symbols have somewhat altered over time, but it's somewhat the same. Okay. So if you look at the left photo, you see the first illustration is a top hat. And it says it's shelter. That's what it means. Now, I have a fez next to it. The fez and the top hat are very similar. right? The only thing about the fez is it has no brim, and the only thing about the top hat, it has no tassel. So it's really similar. And the fez, I told you, is a representation of mother's womb, right? So that's like shelter. See the connection? See the connection? All right. The second, I see cane. It says strength, right? And when I look at the cane personally, I think of the circle seven. That's what it looks like to me. I think of the circle seven. And next, I see the glove. I see the palms up, right? It says purity. So when you look at and define in the one-on-ones, number 93, it says, well, you define the word white. White means purity. Purity means God, and God means ruler of the land. So that's what I get out of the glove symbolism. All right. The champagne glass, it says conservative. So when you look up the word conservative, it says averse to change or innovation and holding traditional values. So if they're holding traditional values, this proves my point, because everything that they have, even if it's been altered just a little bit, it's connecting back to the traditional values of the old time Islamism and what Prophet Noble Drew Ali brought us. All right. So next, you see the 5-point star. It's right here on my cap, right? It says love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Now, when you go down to the one-on-ones, it says, what do the 5 points represent? And that's what it stands for. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, right? You look at the eye, it says Allah watch over us. And I can agree with that, because that one eye is right here. It's that pineal gland. It symbolizes a higher level of consciousness, being able to see things that the average person can't see. And it's not always a physical sight, okay? It's a knowing thing, all right? Now you got 360-degree circle. It says knowledge all around. I agree with that as well, because again, I spoke and told you about the tassel on our fez, how we keep it unpinned so it can spin 360 degrees, right? So it's all knowledge. It's all knowledge. Now the half moons, it says people east, people west. What I get out of that, I get the yin and the yang, by polar opposites, up, down, cause and effect. Again, yin and yang. That's what I get out of that, which is perfectly a part of nature. What goes up gotta come down. You got right, you got left, and so on. All right, we got more symbols. All right, we got more symbols before we wrap it up. So if you look at the illustration in the middle, you see a pyramid, you see a 5-point star, you see a scimitar, and you see El Rukin. The Moors always use scimitars. You go back and look into history, you'll see that Moors use scimitars, as weapons. Okay. You got the pyramid, which has always been one of our insignias. Got the 5-pointed star, which represents love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. El Rukin stands for, I believe, the pillar, which is like a foundation, right? And if you look at the pyramid right beneath, where it says Black Peace Stones and El Rukin, it's a pyramid with a circle 7 around it. Let's go into the symbolism of the 7. It says the 7 is associated with divine knowledge, wisdom, and completion. All right. It reflects the idea of completing a cycle or reaching a higher understanding, right? 7, So don't get it twisted. It ain't no gang shit over here, right? What it is knowledge. It's knowledge, and knowledge is power, right? So again, the 7 is associated with divine knowledge, wisdom, and completion. It reflects the ideal of completing a cycle or reaching a higher understanding. So when we go into the crescent and star, if you look above that pyramid, you see a crescent and star, right? So it says the banner of the crescent star or the flag with the moon and five-pointed star in the center is the insignia of the Asiatic or Moorish nation. It is the mother of all national banners of the world today because it is the oldest. The flag with the Moorish crescent and star represents the entire human family. When when reading or writing in any language, there are only two principal directions in which one may go: lateral, crosswise or across, and or vertical, up and down. All other movements in other direction are just varying degrees of the main two. All right. The moon is always first and is read in the following manner: from left to right, moon and star; from right to left, moon and star; from top down, moon and star; from the bottom up, moon and star. The three meanings of moon and star. As moon and sun, the crescent and star represents both the negative magnetic force and the positive electric force, woman and sun, right? So that's what that crescent and star means. Now, when we go into that pyramid, it says the pyramid is the second symbol of Islam. Its apex at the top indicates that man, essence, is spirit. If the apex were pointed down, the triangle would represent matter. The three equal sides of the triangle symbolize in universal terminology the positive, the negative, and the offspring or union of the two male-female principles. On top of the pyramid is the all-seeing eye that goes back to that eye that we spoke about earlier, which stands for the I in you. The glory or light at the top of the pyramid symbolizes knowledge, wisdom, and light. However, the capstone on the Great Pyramid on the back of the dollar bill is not connected to its base because the masses of humanity are ignorant of their essence, which is spirit, their history, and their heritage. Man's status in the world is controlled by those who know. Consequently, his status is determined by the quality of his own thinking. He who knows all that he can be known by intellectual energy is a god among men. The men who control the political and economical systems of the world are the ones who have capped their pyramids. Ignorance has kept mankind in darkness and in grief, right? So it's a big difference. If you notice that the pyramids we deal with, illustration wise, are always capped. On the back of the dollar bill is uncapped because they know, again, like the masses are ignorant. So what do we do now? What do we do now? What do we do now? I want y'all to leave some comments in the comment section and give me some advice on what do we do next. My thing today was to present information in its original intent to show you that it's not what you may thought from how it started versus to where it is now. And I can say that with the Moorish nation and both the Vice Lord and People nation. All right. I just want to show you how things are connected. All right. So again, y'all leave some comments in comment section and tell me what should we do. Since y'all know what I presented now and you can do your own research, what should we do next? And before I leave, I'm going to leave with this. Something Noble Drew Ali stated: if I could get you all thinking again, you would save yourselves. Until next time, this is Moreno Bey. I wish you peace and love.